Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome to another episode of Care Across Cultures with me, your host Mirban Hussain. You are listening to us on Link FM 96.7. Thank you for joining us again. Today we are talking about grief, bereavement, and where people can find support when someone they love dies. Now, grief is something we all experience, but different cultures and different faiths and families, we all respond to loss in different ways. Some people share their feelings openly, while others prefer to grieve quietly or within a family circle. But whatever your background, nobody should feel that they have to cope alone. My guests today are from Weston Park Cancer Charity in Sheffield, and they will be talking about bereavement support groups and a buddy service, and how these can help people feel less isolated after a loss. As always, this is your programme. If you have a question or want to join the conversation, please call us on 0114 261 8181, or you can text us on 07939 849 339. Before we start, here's a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on the programme belong to me and my guests, and not necessarily those of Link FM or of the organisations that we represent. You're listening to Link FM 96.7, online or DAB. Hello. Hello, Claire and Tom. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for asking us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. How has the weather treated you over the last 2 weeks? Because it was really too hot for me.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I'd say, Mirban. At times I was thinking, this is okay, as long as I don't move and I don't breathe. And then you kind of adjust slightly and suddenly you're kind of sweating. Yeah. And actually, that's quite a good metaphor for what we're going to talk about today, is just how everything is so individual and how just small adjustments can actually make quite a big difference to your experience.
Thank you so much. Now, Tom, we were talking earlier, weren't we? Because you've been to Italy over the last couple of weeks, haven't you? 38 degrees, you said.
That's right.
So the heat over in Italy, I mean, we often talk about this, don't we? That the heat in different countries is different to what it is here. Mm-hmm. So what was it like over there? Because I think you said it was 38 degrees.
Yeah, it got up to 38 degrees at points. It was nicer heat, because the day before we left, we were down in Cambridge before the flight, and that was like unbearable, so muggy and uncomfortable. But yeah, over there it was warmer, but it just wasn't quite as humid. And I had a pool very close to me.
Whoa,
so
okay.
That really helped.
You're just rubbing it in now. You're just rubbing it in. But they do say that is it a mindset? Because I assume you were on holiday in Italy. When you're on holiday, the heat doesn't seem to matter because there's not work to do, is there? There are no chores to do, so there's that as well. So, Claire.
Hello.
Start by telling our listeners a bit about who you are, about your role, and then we'll take it from there.
So, hello everybody listening. So, my name is Claire. I started my career as a teacher, and then realised that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So, I trained in therapy. And so that was in about 2009. And then in 2015, I started working as a therapist for Cavendish Cancer Care. So I've had a lot of experience of working within this field in terms of supporting people with cancer, or people that care for people with cancer. And let's face it, every single one of us knows somebody with cancer, has had some experience of it. So my role at Weston Park Cancer Charity now is more of a lead role. So what that means is that I help make decisions about making service better. I'm in charge of running groups and courses, which I can go into further detail about later. But more relevant to this show, we run a bereavement course. We currently have a grief circle, and there's some pre-recorded content on our Cavendish at Home online resource hub. In addition to that, I also run my own group, which is an acceptance and commitment therapy group. But I'll leave it there because I could go into quite a lot.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We've got plenty of time. We'll talk about some more. So, Tom, I understand you're fairly new to Weston Park Cancer Charity. And when I first started having this conversation with you, you were setting up a new service. Okay. Tell us what brought you into this work.
So, like Claire, I also started off in a slightly different profession. I started off as a filmmaker and working in sort of creative industries, and always worked with charities or on sort of health initiatives or youth clubs, stuff like that. And eventually, over time, about 10 years ago, decided to move more into the area of health and social care. So over the last 10 years, I've just sort of been moving around various organisations and roles in Sheffield, working with different communities and different sort of specific areas, a lot in mental health, and like Claire said, obviously everyone's affected by cancer. When in the last couple of years I started training as a counsellor and was thinking I'd like to get some experiences outside of what I've already done in mental health. So when I saw a role at Weston Park, I thought it's a great opportunity to learn a bit about the world of cancer. I'd recently had a couple of years of sort of cancer situations in the family, this working for Weston Park, the role sort of ties together a lot of the stuff that I've been doing over the last 10 years. So that's what brought me into Weston Park and this role.
Fantastic, thank you. Something that's really close to my heart is normalising death, bereavement and grief, because it seems to me that we don't talk about death, bereavement, grief when we're all at some point have come across it. So Tom, I'm going to ask you, when people hear the word bereavement, what do you think they often imagine, and how different is that from reality?
I think people often imagine a lot of sadness and a lot of pain, but I think a lot of, definitely for me growing up, it was a lot of mystery, because it's definitely in my sort of, the community around me, it's not spoken about or explored, other than the sort of bog standard things that we do. There's not much ritual or explanation around it. So I think for me, bereavement, I always just thought of it as this sort of sad, negative, heavy experience, which it is, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. It's such a complex and wide area. I think that's especially also that some of the people that I've spoken to since working for Weston Park, I think I'd say that sort of that mystery of a lot of people that I've spoken to, they kind of couldn't imagine what it was going to feel like when a bereavement happened to them and the process of grief. And I think there's a massive sense of shock because of not necessarily having proper ways to talk about it, and those sort of rituals and routines that make us more familiar with it. A lot of the people that I've spoken to, they're just experiencing a lot of shock and confusion and having no idea really how to process everything that's been going on for them.
And that's a huge issue I found. So within your circle of family, friends and acquaintances, do they talk about grief or death and bereavement? Do you have those conversations?
No. It's happened more so as I've got older, and I'm, sort of not catching my parents up, but we're closer together in terms of we're experiencing life more as sort of equal adults. Definitely being able to have slightly more conversations about that. But I'm 34, and the last couple of years is the first time I've had those conversations with my parents. All the way through my life, it's been almost radio silence, and that all of my experiences of bereavement and grief up until the last couple of years has been not knowing what people think, not knowing what people feel, not really knowing what's going on around me. And as someone I'm really curious, and I'm sort of an external processor. I love talking through things and understanding things. I've always found that really
it's
hard.
difficult, which you share with a lot of people that I've spoken to as well. Claire, the same sort of question to you in terms of, what do people, through your experience, when you mention the word bereavement, because you run some support groups, so you will have come across lots of different sort of attitudes and views, opinions, and how is that different to the reality, I suppose?
So I'd just like to tie back to what you said in the intro, Mirban, which I thought is really important in terms of everybody has an individual response to grief and bereavement, and that can be because of the type of person that you are, it can be the culture, it can be who you were born to, where you were born. I'll talk a little bit about my own experience first. So my mum was Irish, and we were kind of brought up, she was always saying something to do with death and her mortality, and you kind of just get used to it. But since she died, you kind of think, well, actually, was that useful? What I will say is that I was supporting people with bereavement before having very close bereavements myself.
Right.
So even though I was working one-to-one with somebody, when I had a lot of bereavements in a very short space of time, and there was quite a bit of shock involved, that kind of also shocked me in terms of my own response, but it did add another layer to being able to support people. So I think the word bereavement, for some cultures, for example in the Irish culture, they probably wouldn't use that word, they would say loss. And I can't speak for other cultures and other people. So I think sometimes the words are very different. For some people to say, I've lost somebody, they think, well, that doesn't actually speak to my experience. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that we imagine what the experience is going to be like, and then we go through it, and it could be completely different. I think that is one of the main things I would like to say, is that it's very difficult to kind of predict.
It's also about who you've lost.
Yes, and
how close.
Yeah.
What was your relationship?
Yeah.
If it's, I don't know. I don't mean this in any sort of negative way. If it was somebody that on your street that you just said hello to, as opposed to your dad or your mum or a brother and sister, or sometimes it might be a friend, and how we sort of manage that's always going to be different, isn't it?
I think one of the important elements to this this question that we're discussing is how present are we when we're talking about grief? If we can be present, with what we're saying and what we're experiencing, then that really it's a difficult thing to do, but that really is being present with grief. It's being accepting in the present moment of that grief, and even though that might be very, very hard, that is something that will help guide you through that experience. The trick is to try and be compassionate to yourself whilst that's going on, because we have a lot of expectations. Tying back to the original question, we can put expectations on ourselves of I should be doing it this way. Well, I mean, that often isn't helpful, and I mean it can be, but often it's not helpful. And so I'd just like to encourage people to be present with what's happening and to be as compassionate. What I mean by that is to be as kind to your own response as you possibly can be.
I think that leads me nicely into, because some of these groups that you work one-to-one with people, don't you, and groups as well. What are some of the common sort of worries people have before they reach out for support? What have you come across?
So in terms of bereavement, people that are very recently bereaved, as we know, as we have experienced, life is often turned upside down, and often there can be a very physical response to that bereavement that can be quite surprising. It can really feel quite physical. So understandably, people are asking for help. The help is, please help me not feel what I'm going to feel. Now, that is possible maybe, but there is a cost to that. So before somebody asks for help when they're in that situation, I think that they're just, it's very difficult to quantify what they might be feeling, but they're just thinking, please, somebody help me. And it's much more difficult to kind of think, is this the right thing for me now, actually? When somebody is further, let's say a few months into their bereavement, some of the things that they might be worried about beforehand might be, well, is this the right time for me? Is this going to help? If I do this, am I being disloyal to this person? Because there's a part of me that worries that if I do see somebody for support for bereavement, it might mean I don't think as much of the person and I'm being disloyal. So there's lots of these complexities that people might also be thinking and feeling, this is my lot. This is my issue, or it's just my very close family's issue, and it is not my place to take it outside of this. Okay, so we have to also remember that people are, whether you're aware of it or not, people are informed by so much more than what seems obvious. And what I mean by that is that there are lots of things influencing how we act, how we think, how we behave, and sometimes that will help us get what we need, and sometimes it will take us far away from what we need.
Thank you so much for that. There's a lot of things that you said that I'd love to sort of go into deeper, but our programme only lasts for about 50 minutes. I think you may have to come back and let's have another conversation. Tom, in many families and cultures, grief is something that's kept private, something that, Claire just sort of touched upon. From your experience, how does that affect whether people ask for help or not?
I think when you grow up seeing people not talk about their pain and their grief and their loss, you see people putting on, this learned display of stoicism, of kind of seeming strong and seeming like, you're kind of gritting through it and able to cope. I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's fine. No, there's no problem. I think let's talk about something else. One of the things that you said earlier was about your experience of bereavement and, you know, within your circle of family and friends, where people don't sort of talk about it and you've never talked about it. And that causes then sort of some huge issues, especially when someone gets cancer and, you know, the palliative care or the end of life, and then all of these feelings, emotions sort of come together, don't they? And then we're finding that, you know, they might have been given X amount of months or days to live. And this is where advanced care planning sort of come to its fore. But how advanced care planning is explained, and there's been, you know, I've had lots of conversations about advanced care planning and how some people may see it as not what it's meant to be. Because advanced care planning, from my understanding of what it's meant to be, is that how can we sort of support that person, all the practical and pragmatic things as well as the emotional. But for some people, for most of the people that I've spoken to from various communities, they think it's about hastening death. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know loads about advanced care
planning. You don't? Okay. We'll leave that one. Let's go. Ask Claire. What do you...
I mean, likewise, I don't know a lot about that, but I'm wondering if the question is about some of the perceptions that we have around palliative care,
yes,
and that advanced care planning. I think it's really understandable that, and this is backed up by conversations I've had with people over the years, is that there's and for the person that has got that palliative diagnosis, there's an initial shock, there's a denial, there's a not wanting it to be true, there is, as you mentioned, isolation, helplessness, hopelessness. It's really traumatic. And in that instance, I think it's the what services such as our charity can offer is holding and almost helping contain that experience for the person, which is a very physical, nervous system experience, as well as a spiritual experience, a cultural experience, a mental and emotional experience. Once that let's say safe container has been offered and held for somebody, and that can be done in the simplest of ways. It can be done by meeting somebody with eye contact, with actually being really, really present with that person as they're talking, just to help that nervous system begin to calm down, to help that rational brain come a little bit more back online. Then it can be, okay, how do we support you? Knowing that there's going to be this up and down curve. I spoke to somebody recently who had described exactly what I was talking about. He'd had a simple conversation with somebody, and then we talked about the different things he could get involved in. That reduced his isolation, it reduced his sense of helplessness and hopelessness. His nervous system was able to calm down enough so that he could start thinking, okay, I really don't want this. Of course I don't. And yet it's here. So what can I do to support myself? With the difficult emotions that are inevitably going to come and go. So that they're still there, I'm not trying to get rid of them, but that they've got less control over my actions. And how do I still take these small, gentle steps towards what's important? Because you can still have a lot of meaning in life, even though life may be a lot more limited than you would have wished. So, I mean, what I've just described there in essence, just disclaimer, is it's an acceptance and commitment therapy kind of approach.
Yes.
But does that answer your question?
I think so. I think the key thing that I picked out of that is that each individual person that you come across, their situation is going to be unique, but the way that you support, and the only way that we can support is that by building trust first of all, isn't it? Because if there's no trust, nobody's going to open out to you. So that's a key issue. We are coming to a short break now. If you've just joined us, you are listening to Care Across Cultures with me, your host, Mehban Hussain. I've been talking to two wonderful colleagues from Weston Park Cancer Charity, Claire and Tom. We'll be back shortly after this break. Welcome back to Care Across Cultures with me, your host, Mehban Hussain. You're listening to us on Link FM 96.7. I've been talking to two wonderful colleagues from Weston Park Cancer Charity about grief and bereavement and how people cope. So we're going to go back into the conversation. Welcome back, Tom.
Hello.
Tom, tell us about this new buddy service that you've set up. It sounds quite okay, buddies. Yeah. What is it, and why was there a need for it, Tom?
So I started at Weston Park about 4 months ago, setting up this service. It's actually a service that's been running for a long time, but under a different cancer charity, under Cavendish Cancer Care. And I'm sort of shepherding it into its new iteration. And it started by patients coming through at Cavendish, asking if they could speak to someone who's been through what they've been through. And the team at Cavendish at that time and these patients developed a scheme where these patients would volunteer their time to speak to someone who was going through their cancer journey. And it sort of developed from there. It's about 9 or 10 years ago that started, so it's had quite a bit of development. It got up to about, I think, 20, 30 volunteers. And there are other services like that around the country. In a nutshell, it's a service that gives people going through a cancer journey, so they could be a patient, they could be bereaved, they could be a family member or a loved one. It gives them the opportunity to speak to someone who's been in that similar situation, so that they've got someone to speak to who knows a bit more what it's like, because they might be speaking to lots of medical professionals, lots of different people, but no one who's actually been there, which I think definitely makes a bit of a difference. And people, it's a place where people can get some support on a lot of the common things that come up that are around. How do I speak to my family members about this, or how do I tell somebody, or for loved ones or friends, how do I support them through this? And obviously with bereavement, helping people to cope. And I think one of the big things that people told me is that they want to feel like what they're going through is normal. Like Claire said earlier, people's lives get turned upside down when they're going through something like this, and being able to speak to someone who's gone through it and said, I know what it's like to be there, but it doesn't last forever, and this is where you can get to with some time and some care and some understanding. So in a nutshell, that's what the buddy service is. Like I said, it's been going for a long time, and since moving over to Weston Park, it's sort of getting a bit of a
rebrand and
right.
Okay. So in terms of these are volunteers, then the buddies help support them, and they get full training and all that kind of stuff as usual.
That's right. So it's the most common sort of example is that someone comes through their cancer journey. They might get some support from Weston Park Cancer Charity. A lot of the buddy volunteers that we have, they received a buddy themselves and thought, I want to give that back. I want to be there for someone who's in my situation.
Right.
And they go through some training, which is all about listening and responding, how to be empathetic, how to actively listen, how to not just be giving advice, how to hold someone in that difficult place that they're in, it's at the moment it's going to be a phone only service, somewhat short term. It's not sort of ongoing for a really long time, but just helping people through those months where that big transition is being made. I think the most common time that people use a buddy is usually once treatment has finished, because going through treatment is a massive hectic operation, and so it's usually when people come out the other side that they're like, this is the time that I need to talk to someone about how to process all of that and how to move forward.
Of course. And how could someone access this service? Because I'm assuming Weston Park Cancer Charity is in Sheffield. So is this available just for the Sheffield, or people who access Weston Park?
Anyone that accesses Weston Park, so that can be in Sheffield, Rotherham, Doncaster, Barnsley, Bassett Law,
So as long as they access Weston Park.
That's right, yeah.
Right, so it's not sort of geographical, it's actually accessing Weston Park Cancer Charity supports.
Yeah, and I think I don't think we'd turn anyone away in the area who
No. I think it's important because there may be somebody listening out there, who may think that it's in Sheffield, and So you're saying that currently it's phone only. Are you looking to then increase that to sort of face to face, in person?
I think it's something that we're interested in exploring. Way back when it started, it was face to face, and there are some services that offer face to face. We'll be offering face to face for accessibility reasons. So if anybody's out there thinking, I'm hard of hearing, or I can't speak over the phone, we can facilitate face to face for that. But with it being a new service, and it's a very unique service and a very unique volunteering role, because people are being put together one to one.
Yes,
they're both have been through something that makes them quite vulnerable. It's a very complex thing. It's a very delicate thing. So we're going with phone only to start with, to make it safe and make it a bit more controlled. And if it goes well, then we can sort of expand it out a little bit, because obviously a lot of people, they might hear phone only and think, that's just not for me. But it's going to be baby steps to sort of get to that point.
So the simple set of information point is that if you're listening and you feel that you need, or it would be useful, get in touch and then have a conversation.
Definitely.
But rather than think, it's phone only, I'm not doing it, or it's in Sheffield and I'm not doing it, it's not for me. Definitely just get in touch.
Definitely, because if not the buddy service, we will have something that acts in that kind of way. We've got great social cafes and peer support groups where in a way you're getting the opportunity to speak to lots of people who've been through it. So,
of course.
I think also we'll just really like to say, if anyone has been through a cancer journey themselves, or a cancer related bereavement, and they think, I'd like to help someone, I think I'd feel comfortable talking about it. I think we'd also love to hear from those people as well, because
And who would they need to contact? You? Is there a telephone number?
I don't know it off by
Okay, no worries. What we'll do is, if you let me know, and then when I send it out on my LinkedIn, we'll put the number in. But for those of you who are listening, if either you want to access this service, just Google Weston Park Cancer Charity Buddy Service, and you'll find a number and get in touch. I will put the number on my LinkedIn page when I share the program. Okay, so Claire.
Hello
again. You seem to do quite a lot from what I've sort of my understanding. Okay, before we talk about that, you're both wearing Weston Park Cancer Charity T-shirts, but you've mentioned Cavendish quite a lot.
Sure.
My understanding is that Cavendish and Cancer Weston Park have sort of joined.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Cavendish is no longer.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all sort of Weston Park. I think that was just so that, you know, listeners can understand that it is Weston Park Cancer Charity we're talking about.
Yeah.
Cavendish Care was something different, but you've merged now.
We have merged. You might hear the word Cavendish for the Cavendish Centre, and that's where all our complementary therapies and counselling take place. The other place you might hear it is Cavendish at Home, which is an online resource portal that I started during lockdown, or at the end of lockdown, the pandemic, and that's just pre-recorded content that actually anybody can access.
Okay.
There's a link on our website to do that. So on Cavendish at Home, we've got support around nutrition, so making small, simple steps to try and make a difference. We've got some gentle exercise. We've got some help with sleep, stress, anxiety. So that's an online free resource hub that is open to anybody, regardless of where they are.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So I want to talk about groups and courses, which is your forte. What do they actually involve, and who are they for?
So that is, it's a very big question.
It's a very big question.
I'll try and simplify it. So a group, essentially, it could be a peer support group. It could be a course, which is usually something that is led by a facilitator. And that could be, for example, an art therapy course. It could be acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the group that I run. It could be living with prostate cancer course. We also do a wellbeing day. We've got one this Thursday. And of course, the bereavement course.
And the bereavement course, yes. Okay, so you've mentioned some terminology. I think mindfulness was one, acceptance and commitment therapy. Now, in everyday language, what does that mean?
Okay.
And how do they sort of help people?
Okay. I think it's a really good question, actually, Mirban, because when you say the word mindfulness, it's, I mean, if I'm to say it now, mindfulness, what does it mean? And if you're listening, how do you relate to it? Now, some people that are listening might think, I don't relate to that at all. Some people might hear it and say, oh, that's not for me.
That's not for me, yes.
So I think what's important to consider, I mean, I very often will not use the word mindfulness. I will say being present. Okay. What do I mean by being present? I mean that when you are doing something, whether it is listening, whether it is walking, whether it is cooking, whether it is talking, to try and be as fully in that process as you can be. So it's about noticing. So very often I'll use the word noticing. If we can notice how we're experiencing something, we're much more likely to be able to do something about it. Now, I mean, I am great personally at, like, when things are difficult, pushing them away. You know, oh, let's pretend that's not happening. Now, after years of doing my own work and being involved in the therapy field, I have begun to recognise that when I am doing until 10 o'clock at night, it's usually because I'm trying to avoid something. And the problem is that has a cost.
Yes.
So the skills that we can develop is to notice, okay, what's going on? Am I really here in this moment, or am I somewhere else in my head? So that is mindfulness. And why is that important? Well, firstly, developing some mindfulness skills or some noticing skills can help us when things are difficult. Let me give you an analogy here, Mirban. So let's just imagine we're in a boat, okay, and we've just left harbour, and from nowhere there are 100-mile-an-hour winds, there are 100-foot waves. Well, we can't stop weather. There's nothing that we can do about that weather. It's going to happen. So what are we going to do in that instance? Well, what we're going to try and do is to drop anchor. That anchor is going to try and keep that boat as anchored and as safe as is possible. It's not going to stop the weather, but it's going to help keep us anchored whilst that storm is happening. And it's the same with emotional storms. So that's the purpose. That's why we want to be present. That's why we want to notice. The acceptance and commitment therapy part. Acceptance, I feel, is not what we think it is.
Okay.
I think it's a very, very deeply personal thing. And I think acceptance, your acceptance of something, is entirely up to you, and it's not really anybody else's business.
Okay.
And actually, it's not about accepting this big thing, because if you are 25 and you've got a terminal diagnosis, that may never feel acceptable. But what acceptance means in this context is, can you let those feelings, can you provide a bit of room for all of those feelings? The anger, the frustration, that it's not fairness, okay? Because when we do that, yes, it's never something that we want, but it becomes, instead of us trying to push it away, like I was saying before, or it just being all we think about, you know, I've got my hands over my eyes there because I can't really see anything else in life. It kind of comes here.
Yes.
And it's there, but I can still engage with you. I can have a conversation. I can still listen to Tom. I can still hear the birds. Okay? So it's not about solving something. It's about just accepting what's happening in the moment. The commitment side of it is just taking very small, simple steps, maybe even so small and simple that it feels like, oh, what's the point of doing them?
Right, okay.
But if you, let's say, for example, you're thinking, you know, I want to become a bit more present, because at the moment I'm not really here in the room when I'm with my kids or my grandkids. I'm there physically, but I'm not really there. So that's the why of why you want to develop these skills. And it might be that in a conversation with me, it might be, okay, what's one simple step that you could do? And it might be, okay, I'm going to commit to, for 1 minute, I'm going to ask somebody how was their day, and I'm really going to listen. And I'm going to notice what that's like. It's a very small, simple thing. And yes, it's not going to change everything, but you are doing something meaningful there.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, I love the way that you explained all of that. Yeah. Some things I've learnt new. Thank you so much for that. Tom, is bereavement a concern for people thinking about using the buddy service? Have you come across that yet? What kinds of things are people telling you?
Yeah, I think people do use the buddy service for bereavement. I think, like I said, a lot of people, when they get to the point of experiencing a bereavement, it can be very overwhelming. The pain can be very sharp. It can be very hard to imagine how to move beyond that. And I think there's something incredibly powerful and, you know, therapeutic about speaking to someone who's had that pain and has moved through it. And there's this kind of a trend in what people want is they want to speak to someone who's in some way similar to them. And I think that's because, you know, if we can see someone who's a bit like us and we can see that they've done it, they've got through, they've coped with it, they've managed it, it really helps us believe that we can do it as well. And I think that's one of the sort of foundations of what the buddy service is can't always match people like for like in terms of age or gender or ethnicity, background, or even exactly, you know, what has happened to them. But the goal is to try and find some sort of common ground where, people can see themselves in each other, and that is really, really therapeutic for people. And that's probably one of the most common things that I've heard so far is people saying, you know, for example, like a young person or someone who's had quite a specific bereavement, like losing a child or something like that. They want to speak to someone who's a bit like them. And I think that's where the power is, not only with the buddies but with the groups and
with
courses.
the groups and supports as well.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are daunted by groups and courses. The idea of going and speaking and telling people what's gone on for you, and there's a kind of a depressing view of groups. I think sometimes that I don't want to go and listen to everybody else talk about and mope about what they've been through.
I want to talk about me, and there's that kind of thing as well, isn't there? You're listening to Care Across Culture with me, your host, Mirban Hussain. We are coming to the end of the programme. Only a few more minutes left. I want to thank both my colleagues from Weston Park Cancer Charity, Clare and Tom, for taking time out of their busy working days to come and share with us about some of the work that they do. If you'd like to get in touch with Weston Park Cancer Charity with either to access any of the courses or the buddy service, please just Google Weston Park Cancer Charity and there'll be a telephone number on there. Phone up and then ask to speak to either courses, groups or the buddy service, and one of these people, lovely people, will get back to you. Okay. Now, before we end the programme, Tom and Clare, if for our listeners, okay, what's one thing that you want them to take away from today, Tom?
I think the main thing I want people to take away is that you're not alone. What you're experiencing is really normal. Whatever it is, that pain, that confusion, that despair, it's a really normal reaction to have to whatever you're going through. You're not alone in that, and I think there's such great power in reaching out and hearing from other people who've been through it. So that's the one thing I'd want people to take away, is to think, hopefully they're a little bit closer to thinking, actually, you know what, maybe reaching out and finding someone to talk to, whether it's a group, a course, a buddy, a professional, speaking about it will help.
Thank you so much for that. And Clare?
Yeah, I love what you said there, Tom, and I totally echo all of that. And just to say that we've got dedicated cancer information and support coordinators who can tell people about everything that we offer, including support with welfare and stuff out in the community. I think the message for me is I'm gonna shoehorn two in.
That's
so
okay.
One is be as kind as you possibly can to yourself. And what I mean by that is think about if somebody you love or a beloved pet was suffering, how would you treat them? And do your best to do that for yourself. It's hard. It is really hard. But if all you can do is just put a hand on your heart and just say, this is tough, that's you being kind to yourself. The second thing, along with that, being gentle with yourself, is just very, very simple, small steps make a difference. It's not about solving these things in one go. It's about taking steps towards doing something meaningful and that's going to support you.
Thank you so much. Perfect timing. I just want to thank both my guests again, Tom and Claire. Thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Care Across Cultures with me, your host, Mirban Hussain, on Link FM 96.7. We'll be back next week with another show. Allah Hafiz.